Hey, this is Marcus Washington from MTC Media for the NBA Finals edition of 3 to Make 2 podcast. I wanted to go ahead and mute the TV unless you wanted to hear the French Open. So with the NBA Finals coming up, they start tonight with the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. And the idea that the NBA is going to have their sixth different champion in a row is a product of probably the last two CBAs, and with the current one taking effect on July 1st, this might be the NBA that you see for a while, where dynasties are just going to be, I don't want to say impossible because nothing's impossible, but dynasties are going to be more difficult than it has ever been. The flip side of that is bad teams getting out of your badness, for lack of a better term, is going to be more difficult than it's ever been. Because one of the things that they've been able to capitalize is, if you are a good team, a team on the cusp, a team that was already in the running for an NBA title, rules always let you add on. And even though it might be difficult, might be restrictive, you could add on. And thus, if I was a bad team, look at someone like the Washington Wizards, then I could get all these assets for the future. You saw OKC somewhat do it. You see Utah doing it under Danny Ainge. Well, once July 1st gets here, that's going to be more difficult for the good teams, especially if they're at the second apron. But it's also restrictive if you're above the first apron. So now these bad contracts, or getting rid of big bloated contracts to get future assets, are going to be more difficult, because the teams that would actually pay and make those deals won't be, per league rules, be able to make those deals. So what we're seeing out the NBA now is somewhat the end of an era, in one sense, of how teams are going to operate, how teams are going to add on, and all this sort of stuff, in the continuation of what we've seen as far as different teams being able to get to the NBA Finals. So when we look at Dallas and Boston, we look sort of at some of the differences. If you shove aside the stars, and we're going to get to the stars in a second, for Boston, obviously, ending their series so early has really helped them with being able to get Kristaps Porzingis back. I think that's been forgotten throughout this run for the Celtics, is how important Porzingis has been throughout the season. And he got hurt, haven't been able to perform in the playoffs, but getting him back stretches the floor in ways that can help him against Dallas, that Dallas hasn't seen. In the sense that Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively have been such big pieces in the lane. They have been the ultimate rim protectors. They're changing shots, they're blocking shots, they're rebounding, they're doing everything on that defensive end that is making such a difference. Well, the one thing that Porzingis does is he takes you away from the rim. So now you're looking for other matchups, maybe to get Gafford or to get Lively off of them. But if you swing him over to Horford can, not as well as Porzingis, but Horford has spots on the floor where he can pull you away from the rim. So that's the first thing that I'm going to be watching for tonight in Game 1, is how does Joe Mazzulla use that? How does he use Horford and Porzingis to take away from what has been one of Dallas's strengths and getting here to the NBA Finals? And for the flip side, how does Boston deal with the others? And besides Gafford, in particular, P.J. Washington and Derrick Jones Jr., who have had their fingerprints on some of Dallas's wins with big shots, especially with Jones Jr., that corner three, with P.J. Washington kind of being a two-way guy, hitting that wing three, being able to get downhill when asked to make a shot off of a Kyrie or Luka pass, being able to make those shots, and they have made an impact. And that's going to impact the way that the Celtics are going to guard them, and the way the Celtics are going to guard Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, because just rolling guys off of them might only be so effective if those guys come to perform. So those are some of the things, without getting into the main players. Those are some of the things that it's worth watching, not only in game 1, but games 2 and 3, where NBA coaches aren't given enough credit for the adjustments that they make. We just look at the players. Oh, it's the NBA, anybody can do it, you know, as if they just roll the ball out. But games 2 and 3 and those adjustments that you make, and then obviously the flipping venue, it's going to tell a lot about Jason Kidd and Joe Mazzulla. Now, one of the things that, if you look throughout the NBA Finals, there's always been questions of, well, who has the best players? Who has the top players on the floor? And this is interesting because the Celtics are favored to win the series. If you go and look at all the betting houses, the legitimate ones, they're the favorite. But you can easily argue that not only does the Dallas Mavericks have the best player on the floor, Dallas Mavericks have the best 2 players on the floor, in Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving has been able to lock in to playing defense. We always talk about all the stuff he does on offense. He's locked in defensively. This is the Kyrie Irving that, my word, if he had been like this all throughout, you know, he wouldn't have been on as many teams as he's been on, because he's made it up in his mind that he's going to impact this game on both floors. He's going to be unselfish. He's going to do these things that's going to help his teammates be better, and act a little less Kobe-ish, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. And then you have Luka Doncic, who has the smack-talking Euro, who has used this playoff run as a platform for people who have thought of him as being below. Because in the NBA, fair or unfair, when you are considered a superstar, there's another level for superstars and superstars who get it done. And when I mean get it done in the NBA Finals. And it's not the same, and you're not looked at the same. Steve Nash and John Stockton, you can talk all the things that you want about them. They never got it done. In fact, Steve Nash never even made it to an NBA Finals. Then you have guys like Charles Barkley, who have never done it. All of those guys are really, really good players in their own right. But that idea of not having a title, which means so much amongst the top players in the NBA. Not every player in the NBA. The top players in the NBA. It's a difference maker. And Luka Doncic probably has his best chance to get a title, and Kyrie Irving has his best chance to get a title without LeBron James. So from the Dallas perspective, having the top 2 players on the floor, yet being the underdog, is unusual for the NBA. On Boston's side, it's a lot of its continuity. Their top 2 players are nothing to sneeze at in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But when you really look at it and you say, hey, look, man, close game, last 4 minutes. You know, you see this so much in the NBA. Close game, last 4 minutes, last 3.5 minutes. Who do you have the most confidence in executing? Because these teams have a lot of similarity when it comes to the others and how impactful their others can be. The question is, when it comes down to the last 3.5, 4 minutes, which one of the team's stars do you have more confidence in? And yes, Doncic has never been here. Yes, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown has been here more recently than Kyrie Irving. But if you put a gun to my head and you said, who do you have more confidence in? And when it comes to the stars, the top 2 guys on each team coming down the stretch to execute and not to do anything stupid, my more confidence is in the Dallas Mavericks too, in Doncic and Kyrie. I think I have a lot more confidence in them than I do in Tatum and Brown coming down the stretch of a close game when you have to deliver. So as much as the Boston Celtics are the favorite, when you look at how the NBA has been in the past, past. And of course, there's exceptions. You can say the Detroit Pistons that beat the Lakers. When the Lakers had Shaq and Kobe, there's a difference because the Lakers had the best two players on the floor then too, and then win the series. But those examples are few and far between. Generally, you can look at that and you can see where those best player or the best two players are, and you can go from there. And I don't think they're necessarily even because, like I said, in the last 4 minutes, I think Dallas has shown that Ivory Doncic combination is much better down the stretch than the Tatum Brown combination. But getting back to Kyrie and all the talk about how Kyrie's different, how he's been a good soldier. Oh, how come we haven't seen this Kyrie? And I think the problem with what has happened with Kyrie was Kobe Bryant. Kyrie really wanted the Kobe experience. Remember the whole thing with Kobe and Shaq and whose team it is and who isn't, and the Lakers chose to give it to Kobe and Shaq goes off. And I do think that Kyrie wanted his own team so he could be like Kobe and get out of LeBron James. And he wanted so bad to win a title without LeBron in a team that was quote unquote his, which was what Kobe did with the Lakers. That it was that Kobe wanted a team. Now the Lakers didn't end up trading Kobe. Kobe ended up staying. But the idea that he got those titles without Shaq. And Kyrie wanted that so bad. And I think what it did was it manifested himself into being a locker room killer. Because not only did he want that, he wanted it on his terms, his way, building it his way. And that is the difference between Kobe, because the Lakers front office built around him in an NBA that was very different then. But they were the ones who built around him. They could play that mid-range inside-out game back then that you can't play now with Pau Gasol and Kobe, and then surround them with guys that can do enough to impact and affect winning. But with Kyrie, he could not get it in Boston. He could not get it in Brooklyn when he tried to pair with Durant and James Harden and all these things. So he has been wandering in the forest for 40 years, looking to get this opportunity and get back to the promised land. And he's finally gotten it there as someone that is different. Now, I do think that you have to credit God, Sham God, Jason Kidd, guys that he obviously respects. Credit him for a maturity to a certain level, even though people don't want to do that. But let's not get it twisted. Just because he's acting more mature doesn't mean that he was exonerated for the path that he has left with other organizations, because he's not exonerated for that. So you can be right on both sides. You can be right to say, hey man, Kyrie ruined a couple of good situations. The situation in Boston was excellent when he got there, ruined that. The situation in Brooklyn wasn't excellent, but the idea was, trust us, we can make it work. And that didn't happen. And so here, leadership, like I said, with Sham God, Kidd, has helped him realize where he can be Kyrie and feel like being Kyrie self and being comfortable with being Kyrie without wanting to have that Kobe experience of, look at me, I won these titles without LeBron, which is what all the getting out of Cleveland was about, and then dictating going to Boston. That's all it was about. So, you know, the hot news all morning, even though it's game one of the NBA title, it's the fact that the Lakers are going to make a strong run after Danny Hurley, the back-to-back national champion UConn head coach. Yes, you can see my cat, who is named Luca, by the way, for make that serious run to get the UConn coach. Now, look, there's a few things that needs to be clarified here. There has been no indication, at least to the moment of this taping, that there's mutual interest. It seems right now the interest solely is on the Lakers side, which, you know, it's not surprising. It's not shocking. And I think also when you have a college coach that is that popular, that successful, people drag out a bunch of nonsense and starting with, you'll regret coaching in the NBA and coaching those guys. And that comes from people who have no idea what it's like to be, to do recruiting in college basketball. I think it's people who want to think that college basketball is the way it was when someone like Bobby Knight was coaching, where you just demanded out of kids and you were the general and you do this. I mean, Bobby Knight couldn't coach in today's age, because I can tell you what, Bobby Knight would not play nice with the AAU coaches that you need to do in order to get top players. Bobby Knight would not play nice with the trainers, which now every kid has a trainer. Every kid has these business representatives because of NIL, so on and so forth. He would have to play nice with them and make deals with them. Bobby Knight wouldn't have done that. We all know that he wouldn't have done that. His ego wouldn't let him do that. And there's so much talent in college basketball now. If you don't have talent, you don't win. You can talk about how great of an X and O's guy Bobby Knight is or isn't, but the truth of the matter is you ain't going to win today in college basketball if you don't have talent. And if you are saying, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, kids aren't going there. Kids are more informed than ever. They're not going there. So when people say, oh, you'd be much happier in college, how? And we haven't even talked about where college athletics is going. We haven't talked about the NIL. We ain't talked about revenue sharing, which is coming. We haven't talked about the transfer portal and how kids can leave. You have more of a chance to have stability in the NBA with your roster than you do in college basketball. So where is all of this overarching, oh, you'd be much happier in college basketball? In what college basketball? Not the college basketball that exists today. That's not an assumption. That's just an incorrect assumption from people who don't know how recruiting works. And for those who don't know, I'm part of that machine. I'm part of the recruiting machine. I don't only do this. I also are coaching on the other side in pieces of that machine. So yes, I'm there. I see it. I talk to these coaches during the live periods all the time as a coach, so on and so forth. So no, the assumption that they're much happier because you're dealing with kids. If you think that you're dealing with kids, then you need to wake up and come to the reality of this real world, because that's not how it works with college athletics. Now, with all that said, as of this taping, I don't think that Hurley's leaving UConn. I think he gets a new contract on top of the new contract that he had just received. He'll get some insurances, maybe he'll get facilities, maybe he'll get pay raises for his assistants. But as of taping right now, I don't foresee Danny Hurley leaving UConn. I still believe that the next coach of the Los Angeles Lakers will be either Borrega or JJ Redick, simply because Hurley, to me, probably wants to stay at UConn right now. He has a great thing going. He has a good roster. Doesn't have the best roster in the country. Last year, he had the best roster in the country. He doesn't have the best roster in the country. I think the best roster in the country, whether they end up winning the national championship or not, resides in Tuscaloosa. It doesn't even reside in Durham. It resides in Tuscaloosa. And if you don't believe me, go look what Nate Oates will be playing with this year. But I do think that Hurley ends up staying in college. But this idea that he couldn't coach in the NBA or that he would be miserable in the NBA is incorrect. Because the one thing I will give Danny Hurley is this. I believe he makes the adjustment if he goes to the NBA, and that he knows that he's not going to coach the way or act the way he did in college. And the idea that fans can't see that. Fans think, oh, well, because you can't do. Who said they'd be the same person? You know, Mike Krzyzewski wasn't the same person with Team USA that he was at Duke. He understood that you're not yelling at kids in Durham and having them slap the floor and all that. He understood that. He's not an idiot. And I don't think that Danny Hurley is an idiot. So I think Danny Hurley actually would do fine in the NBA. I honestly think that Danny Hurley would do fine with the Lakers as they transition out of LeBron James and into Anthony Davis. The only thing that would submarine Danny Hurley in Los Angeles is the Laker front office, which I still think is poorly constructed. I think that they need new leadership when it comes to player personnel, who's making the decisions, That's what they need. But it won't be because Danny Hurley can't coach in the NBA and Danny Hurley can't coach men and he'll be miserable. It won't be that. Hurley's too good for it to be that.